goes faster and faster.
Welcome back to With Antone MotoGP. Who wins the 2026 MotoGP World Championship? Not who can win it, not who deserves to win it, but who does everyone want to win? Because this is a unique year in MotoGP. Some riders are staying and some riders are leaving, and that creates a very different question for each of the manufacturers. This Thursday, I want you to imagine you're the boss of either Ducati or Aprilia, and you've got one job: win the 2026 World Championship. But your best chance of winning might be a rider who is leaving your factory. Do you still give him everything? Because every upgrade, every piece of data, every advantage that you give them today could be helping a rival tomorrow. And that's where the 2026 championship gets more than interesting. Okay, so there's three main interests. First, the rider. Now that's simple. The goal of the rider is to win the world championship. The rider doesn't care about the 2027 manufacturer strategy. He wants the title and the chance to run the #1 plate. And of course, his place in history. Then second, you've got the manufacturer, and this is where it gets complicated. The manufacturer wants the Riders' Championship, the manufacturer's championship, but they also want development of their technology, keep their competitive advantage, a commercial return on their investment, and brand prestige. And critically, a competitive bike for 2027. And if you're enjoying this type of MotoGP analysis, I would really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. It makes a huge difference to an independent channel like mine, and it's completely free. And now there's the third interest, because MotoGP isn't just a battle between the riders and the manufacturers anymore. Liberty Media, and Liberty Media has a different objective. They want to grow MotoGP. They want more fans, a bigger market, more global reference, and a bigger and stories and bigger stars. And what are they thinking right now? What championship story in 2026 makes MotoGP bigger and will grow our profits? Okay, let's look at Ducati first. Ducati has two contenders for the title. Marc Marquez is staying on for 2027. So if Marc wins, Ducati wins the title, Marc will remain a Ducati rider, and the #1 plate stays within the Ducati organisation. Ducati gets the maximum sporting and commercial benefit. The development knowledge stays inside the organisation, and from a manufacturer's perspective, that is the perfect outcome. Then you got Fabio Di Giannantonio, potentially the opposite situation. Is Ducati's manufacturer's calculation going to be the same for a rider leaving for another factory for 2027? Because Di Gio winning still gives them a world championship, which is enormous value for Ducati. But then the champion walks out the door, and everything that rider has learned about the GP26 and Ducati itself potentially goes out the door with him. And that's where staying versus leaving, the argument becomes interesting. And then, of course, we've got 2024. This is important because Ducati has already lived through the same problem. Jorge Martin won the championship as a Pramac satellite Ducati rider, then he left Ducati. So Ducati know exactly what it feels like to build a championship winning package and then lose the champion, but then watch him become a rival. Not because it proves Ducati will favour Marc, or does it in fact prove that they will? Okay, across at Aprilia, it's a little bit more interesting because Aprilia have a different problem. Well, they've got 4 contenders and 4 problems. If Bezz or Raul Fernandez wins, then Aprilia wins the championship with the riders that are secure and part of its future. That's almost the dream scenario. The title isn't just a sporting achievement, it's validation of the entire Aprilia MotoGP project. and the knowledge gained during the championship this year will stay within the factory. But then look across, you've got Jorge Martin and Ayagura. Now these are the fascinating riders. Imagine Aprilia wins the 2026 World Championship. Brilliant, fantastic. But the rider who wins it leaves the organisation and potentially takes the #1 plate somewhere else. In that case, it's going to be Yamaha for 2027. So suddenly, Aprilia's question becomes, is winning the championship still worth everything if the champion then becomes your competitor? Of course it is, but perhaps not in exactly the same way. And that's the tension that we have at Aprilia. But don't make the obvious mistake. A factory cannot simply stop supporting a rider because they are leaving or joining a different team. Why? Because Ducati and Aprilia both still want to win. They still want the championship, manufacturers' championship, race victories, keep the data, develop information, publicly celebrate the success and deliver commercial and sponsorship value. And deliberately giving a rider an inferior bike would be potentially self-defeating. So the question isn't, will they lessen the support for a rider? Absolutely not. The better question is, when two riders are in the championship fight, does the manufacturer's long-term interest influences where the resources go? And that is a much harder question to answer. Let me know what you think could play out. Drop it down in the comments and we can have a chat. So the manufacturer's scorecard, Ducati, well, the best outcome, Marc Marquez wins. He stays a factory rider. He stays as the champion. The #1 plate stays in Ducati and the knowledge stays there. If Fabio Di Giannantonio wins, Ducati get the title, but not a champion on their bike for 27. Now Aprilia, the best manufacturer outcome for them is Bezz or Fernandez winning. They're both staying for 27. The championship stays, #1 plate stays, all the knowledge is there, and then there's a complication. If Jorge Martin or Ayagura wins, Aprilia gets the biggest sporting prize but loses the champion, and that is the manufacturer's paradox. But Liberty are going to ask the question, what championship story grows MotoGP? What if Liberty's ideal champion isn't the same as Ducati or Aprilia's? And that gives us the possibility of a non-Spanish, non-Italian champion. And that's where Agura becomes more than interesting. Not because we're saying that Liberty wants Agura to win, but because we can ask this question: would a Japanese MotoGP world champion create a different global growth opportunity for MotoGP? So the biggest question isn't who can win the championship for 2026. Maybe it's who does everyone want to win? So what happens though when those three interests don't point to the same rider? Anyway, let me know what you think. Drop it down in the comments and we can have a chat and we can talk about the contenders and whether each contender will get the same support, whether they're staying or leaving. And I'm going to leave you with that question to think about. Now remember, here on With Antone MotoGP, it's data, not noise. Okay, thanks for watching and I look forward to talking to you again real soon. Bye for now.
And always faster and faster.